What if arrogance could blind a man until the very sky turned against him? In the humid air above Rabaul, Captain Hiroshi Tanaka smirks inside his cockpit, his Zero gliding like a blade through sunlight. Below, smoke curls from a wrecked Hellcat, its pilot lost in flame. Clumsy American boxes, he mutters, and his squadron laughs through their radios. But hundreds of miles away, aboard the USS Princeton, Lieutenant Jack Monroe wipes oil from his hands and stares at a photo of his brother, one of Tanaka's kills. He doesn't smile. He just listens as Commander Ellison's voice cracks over the intercom. Men, the new Hellcats have arrived. Time to even the sky. Jack's eyes harden. He climbs the ladder to his aircraft, fingers tracing the painted name, Mercy, outside. Waves shimmer gold, reflecting both hope and vengeance. The engines roar, and as the propeller spins, Jack whispers, "Let's see who laughs now." Dawn creeps over the Pacific like a hesitant promise, painting the USS Princeton in hues of rose and smoke. The air tastes of fuel and salt as pilots prepare for their first Hellcat mission. Jack Monroe walks between the planes, his leather jacket still damp from sea air, eyes heavy but calm. Billy Crane jogs beside him, too eager, his voice cracking as he asks if it's true the Japanese laugh at their new planes. Jack doesn't answer. He glances at the Hellcat wings, remembering his brother's letter that ended mid-sentence. Over the loudspeaker, Commander Ellison's voice steadies every heartbeat. "Gentlemen, this sky belongs to those who fight with purpose." Jack looks at the rising sun, its red circle eerily echoing the Japanese flag, and whispers to himself, "Then let's take it back." Engines awaken. The sea trembles. War, for a moment, feels personal again. High above the island of Bougainville, Captain Hiroshi Tanaka leads his Zero squadron through streaks of pink cloud. His laughter echoes in the radio chatter as he tells Kenji Arai that the Americans have sent metal whales to fight birds. Kenji smiles faintly but doesn't laugh. He's been watching the sky differently lately, seeing the same fire in both enemies' eyes. "Do you think they fight for something?" he asks. Tanaka's tone shifts, lower, almost regretful. "They fight for pride, same as us." Below, the ocean mirrors the burning dawn. The radio crackles again. Enemy aircraft approaching. Tanaka straightens, breath steady, scarf fluttering like a flag of defiance. He grins, but somewhere inside, a quiet doubt begins to stir. Back aboard the Princeton, the pilots gather in the ready room, the air heavy with cigarette smoke and nerves. Commander Ellison stands before a chalkboard map filled with arrows and red circles. "The Zeros are faster in climb," she explains, tapping the board sharply. "But you," she points at Jack and Billy, "have armor, fire, power, and heart." Billy grins nervously, elbowing Jack, who remains still, eyes fixed on the thawing dot, island marked Rabaul. He hears Ellison's voice as if underwater. "Your mission, protect the bombers. No hero runs." Jack clenches his jaw. The word protect sounds like a promise he couldn't keep before. When the briefing ends, he lingers by the door, whispering, "This time I'll bring someone home." Engines thunder as the first squadron launches into the open sky. Jack's Hellcat rolls down the deck, salt spray bursting against its sides, wings slicing into the wind. Below deck, mechanics cheer quietly, but above, silence takes hold. Jack forms up with Billy, their aircraft shimmering like blue steel birds beneath the glowing horizon. Far ahead, black dots rise, enemy planes, moving fast. The radio crackles with static, followed by Ellison's voice. "Angels above 15,000. Stay sharp." Jack's heart steadies. The Pacific stretches endlessly, a mirror between life and death. For a fleeting second, he feels no fear, only The calm before the world catches fire. The clouds part like a curtain and the war begins again. Jack Monroe's Hellcat dives through sunlight, bullets tracing silver paths behind him. Ahead, the Zero formation splits with perfect grace, their movements almost poetic in the chaos. Hiroshi Tanaka laughs once more into the radio. Not mockery this time, but thrill, as he spirals toward the blue aircraft that dares to climb higher. Impressive, he murmurs, locking eyes with the Hellcat that doesn't flinch. Jack grits his teeth, sweat streaking his temple, remembering his brother's final Mayday cry. The sky shrieks with metal and wind. Bullets shred clouds, flames bloom like falling stars. Then silence, brief and holy, before both men turn for another pass. Pride meets vengeance at 15,000 feet, and neither man is willing to blink first. The battle becomes a dance. Planes twist, roll, vanish, and reappear. Billy Crane shouts through static, "I've got one," before his voice cuts off into crackling silence. Jack's heart jolts, eyes searching the clouds, spotting a burning trail spiraling downward. "Billy!" he calls, but the sea offers no answer. Above, Tanaka locks onto another Hellcat, his bullets stitching through the wing. For a heartbeat, he sees the pilot's terrified face, young, freckled, and something inside him breaks. He pulls away, hand trembling. Kenji's voice crackles through. "Captain, what are you doing?" Tanaka hesitates, watching the falling flame disappear into the water. His laughter dies, replaced by the sound of his own breath, ragged and unsure. Smoke clings to the air like memory. Jack circles the last known spot of Billy's descent, calling again and again into the radio. "Crane, respond." Nothing. Commander Ellison's voice cuts through, steady but tight. "Monroe, return to formation." That's an order, but Jack doesn't move. His eyes blur with rage. "You said protect," he whispers, pulling the throttle forward. Far ahead, the last Zero glints in sunlight. His grief hardens into purpose. "Mercy, huh?" he mutters, gripping the stick. The Hellcat roars into pursuit, engine howling like vengeance itself. Somewhere inside that thunder, the line between justice and wrath begins to vanish. Tanaka banks hard to evade the chasing Hellcat. His hands, once steady, tremble as bullets slice through the clouds beside him. He recognizes the enemy's pattern, deliberate, unrelenting. The same pilot, he mutters, half in awe. Kenji's voice fills the radio, begging him to retreat, but Tanaka ignores it. "No," he says quietly. "I need to know who he is." He flips the Zero around, facing the storm head-on. The two planes rush toward each other in a collision of sound and sunlight, their paths crossing so close that their wings almost kiss. Neither man fires. For a breathless instant, the sky feels human again. Night falls over the Pacific, heavy and endless. The surviving planes limp home, their engines coughing smoke. Jack lands hard on the Princeton's deck, canopy cracking as he pulls it open. Silence greets him. No cheers. No Billy, only the sound of ocean wind through steel rails. Commander Ellison meets his gaze but says nothing. She doesn't need to. The sea glows faintly under moonlight, carrying the ghosts of both sides. Somewhere beyond the waves, Tanaka hovers alone over empty darkness, staring at the stars reflected in the water below. Two pilots, enemies by duty, share the same haunted silence, and for the first time, neither feels like the victor. The Pacific dawn returns, but it feels hollow. Jack Monroe sits alone in the carrier mess hall, untouched breakfast cooling before him. Around him, laughter echoes from other tables, hollow against metal walls. He hears Billy's voice in memory, young, full of wonder, and guilt floods through him like tide water. Commander Ellison approaches, her boots sharp on the floor. "You did what you could," she says softly. Jack doesn't look up. It wasn't enough. She studies him, then places a folded telegram on the table. "We all fight ghosts out here, Lieutenant. Just make sure you don't become one." As she walks away, the ship tilts slightly with the waves, and Jack's reflection in the steel table stares back. Stranger, harder, and lost. Far across the sea, Hiroshi Tanaka kneels beside Kenji's bunk in their base camp at Rabal. Kenji stares at the floor, his hand trembling as he wraps a blood-stained bandage on his arm. "They're not like before," he whispers. "Those new planes, they don't run, they fight." Tanaka nods, silent, staring at his own reflection in the small mirror hung beside his cot. "We mucked them," he says quietly, "but they've become what we once were." Outside, the jungle hums with distant engines and cicadas. Tanaka removes his white scarf and folds it carefully as if laying a piece of his pride to rest. "Kenji," he says, voice low, "next time, I want you to stay on the ground." Kenji's eyes wide. "Captain." "That's an order," Tanaka says, and walks into the rain. That evening, Jack stands on the carrier deck staring into the dark water. The sea reflects the faint shimmer of starlight, endless and accusing. A mechanic passes by, salutes, and leaves him alone with his thoughts. Jack grips the railing, remembering his brother's laugh, the way Billy's voice broke before the radio died. "You said protect," he mutters again, words barely reaching the wind. From below deck comes the distant hum of music. Someone's trying to remember home. Jack closes his eyes, feeling the rhythm of the ocean below. For the first time, he wonders what his enemies are thinking tonight. Do they mourn, too? Do they pray for forgiveness the same way he does, but never aloud? At the Japanese airfield, Tanaka writes a letter by lantern light. His handwriting trembles, the ink bleeding slightly onto the thin paper. "To my mother," he begins, "the sky is no longer ours. We are ghosts fighting other ghosts." He pauses, listening to the faint sound of an engine outside, one of the new Zeros being tuned for battle. "I used to think victory was honor," he writes, "but now I think it is only survival." Kenji enters quietly, ignoring orders, carrying 2 cups of tea. "If I die tomorrow," Tanaka says without looking up, "tell them I remembered every name." Kenji sets the cup down, his voice soft. "Then live, Captain, so you can say them yourself." The lantern flickers as thunder rolls beyond the horizon. Morning again. The carrier crew prepares for another sortie, engines warming like restless beasts. Commander Ellison gathers the pilots, her voice even but grave. Intelligence reports heavy Zero presence over Rabal. "You'll be outnumbered." A silence hangs before she adds, "Remember, survival isn't cowardice. It's justice to the living." Jack looks at the faces around him. Some eager, some terrified, all pretending courage. As he straps into his Hellcat, he glances toward the sea's horizon where the sun rises red. "Billy," he whispers, "watch me this time." The plane lurches forward, wheels lifting off steel, and the Pacific opens beneath him like a promise and a warning. The air over Rabal hums, like a storm about to break. Jack Monroe's squadron slices through clouds, the Hellcats shimmering under the harsh Pacific sun. Below, the jungle burns from the night's bombardment, smoke rising like dark curtains into the morning light. "Stay sharp," Jack says into the radio, voice calm but cold. On the ground, Hiroshi Tanaka climbs into his Zero, ignoring Kenji's desperate plea to stay behind. "You said live," Tanaka tells him. "Now let me prove it." Engines scream. Metal trembles, and the two forces rush toward each other across a sky already stained with yesterday's losses. The laughter that once filled the radios is gone. In its place, silence, discipline, and the quiet pulse of fate. The two squadrons meet head-on, a flash of silver and blue. Bullets weave through sunlight like threads of fire. Jack locks onto a Zero, pulling the trigger. Nothing jammed. He curses under his breath, banking hard, trying to clear the gun. A Zero slides onto his tail, bullets shredding his left wing. "I'm hit!" he yells, spinning through black smoke. Far below, Tanaka sees the falling Hellcat and recognizes its markings. Mercy. The name echoes in his mind. He dives without thinking, firing short bursts to drive off his own wingman, pursuing Jack. "That one's mine," he mutters, though even he doesn't know why. The two planes spiral downward together, enemies bound by instinct more than hate. Jack levels out barely above the treetops, engine coughing. His hands shake, sweat blinding his eyes. He glances back. Tanaka's Zero is still there, but not firing. Confused, Jack jerks his plane toward the open sea, leading the enemy away from his squadron. Over the radio, Ellison's voice cuts through static. "Monroe! Respond! Do not break formation." But he's already gone, lost in the roaring storm of wind and fear. Tanaka follows close behind, his own engine straining. Neither man speaks, though both feel it. The strange calm of two survivors who've seen too much of the same truth. Justice has turned into something quieter, something neither side can name. The chase drifts out over open ocean. Far from any fleet or island, the clouds thicken, heavy with rain. Jack's voice finally breaks through the static. "Why didn't you finish it?" He doesn't expect an answer. But Tanaka switches frequency, replying in broken English. "Because you fight with honor." The words hang between them like a fragile bridge. Lightning flashes, thunder rolls. For a brief instant, Jack sees the man behind the enemy, tired, human, just like him. "Maybe we both lost already," Jack whispers. Then, without warning, a third plane dives from the clouds, an American Hellcat firing on the Zero. Jack screams into the radio, "Hold your fire!" But it's too late. Bullets tear through the storm. Tanaka's Zero jerks violently, smoke trailing from its fuselage. "Go," he says softly, his voice fading with static. Jack's heart pounds. He pulls alongside the wounded plane, rain pelting both cockpits. Their eyes meet across the narrow gap, one last silent conversation between men who no longer see enemy colors. Tanaka raises a trembling hand in salute before his plane tips sideways and vanishes into the gray sea below. Jack circles once, searching the waves, but the storm swallows everything. He whispers, "Mercy," his voice breaking, then turns home, leaving behind a silence deeper than victory. The storm has passed, but the silence that follows is heavier than thunder. Jack Monroe lands his battered Hellcat on the Princeton, its wheels scraping against the slick deck. The crew rushes to help, but he waves them off, stepping out into the rain. His eyes search the horizon as if expecting to see the white wings of the Zero breaking the waves. Commander Ellison approaches, her face unreadable. "You made it back," she says quietly. Jack nods, voice hoarse. He didn't. Ellison studies him, recognizing the fracture in his tone. "Surviving isn't guilt, Monroe. It's duty." Jack stares at the ocean where lightning once danced. Then, why does it feel like betrayal? The engines fall silent. Only the sea answers, whispering of all the names lost beneath it. In Rabaul, the rain hasn't stopped. Kenji Arai stands at the shoreline, staring at the endless sea. A piece of white cloth, Tanaka's scarf, floats toward him, tangled in debris. He picks it up, pressing it to his chest. Around him, mechanics clear wreckage, silent, eyes hollow. For the first time, the airfield feels like a graveyard. Kenji kneels, whispering, "You said live." The words tremble in the wind. A younger pilot approaches, asking if the captain will return. Kenji looks up, eyes filled with something beyond tears. "He already has," he says softly, glancing at the scarf fluttering in his hand like a ghost refusing to rest. Night returns to the Princeton. Jack sits in the briefing room alone, a map of the Pacific glowing faintly under a single bulb. His flight log lies open, untouched. Across the table rests Tanaka's emblem, a rising sun insignia recovered from wreckage by a reconnaissance team. He turns it over slowly, the metal cold against his skin. "You fought with honor," he whispers, almost to himself. In that small, quiet room, the line between enemy and brother dissolves completely. He writes one line in his logbook. "Mercy is not weakness." Then he closes it and exhales. A man no longer seeking vengeance, only peace. Morning again. The sea is calm, sky clear, as if the world itself has chosen silence over triumph. Jack walks along the deck, the wind brushing against his flight jacket. A younger pilot jogs up beside him, nervous, eager, the same way Billy once was. "Sir," the boy asks, "is it true the Hellcats can outfight the Zeros now?" Jack looks at him, eyes softening. "They can fly," he answers, "but fighting isn't the same as winning." The boy frowns, confused, but Jack simply nods toward the horizon. "Remember that." As the pilot runs off, Jack stands alone at the edge of the deck, sunlight breaking through the clouds like a quiet benediction. In Rabal's evening light, Kenji hangs Tanaka's scarf from a broken propeller blade, standing like a cross. He salutes once, eyes steady, then turns away. The camera drifts upward, catching the reflection of sunset on the ocean where two nations once clashed. Across that same horizon, Jack's Hellcat patrols quietly, not hunting, just flying. The radio hums faintly with static, and for a heartbeat he hears a voice, a soft, distant echo. "You fight with honor." He smiles, small but true. The sky fades into gold, then blue, then night again. And in that endless sky, mercy lives on, unseen but eternal. Weeks have passed. The war pushes onward, but the world feels quieter now. Jack Monroe sits beside the carrier rail at dusk, the ocean glistening gold. The ship hums softly beneath his boots. Around him, laughter rises faintly from younger pilots, their innocence still untouched by the ghosts that follow him. Commander Ellison joins him, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "You haven't written home," she says gently. Jack takes the cup, staring at the horizon. "Home feels far away, Ma'am," she nods. "It always does, until you decide to return." For a moment, they sit in silence, 2 soldiers bound by duty and loss. Then Jack whispers, "He saluted before he fell." Ellison looks at him, eyes steady. Then maybe that was his way of coming home. At Rabal, Kenji walks through the remnants of the base, burned hangars, twisted planes, silence broken only by wind. Soldiers pack supplies for withdrawal, their faces blank. He pauses beside Tanaka's empty tent, still bearing the faint scent of oil and paper. Inside, a single photograph lies pinned to the wall. Tanaka and his squadron, smiling, unscarred by war. Kenji removes it carefully, folding it into his flight jacket. "We were invincible once," he murmurs, "until we learned we weren't gods." The words hang in the humid air, neither bitter nor mournful, just true. He looks toward the horizon, where the sound of distant engines fades into memory. The Pacific skies have grown softer. Jack's Hellcat glides silently through a field of clouds. No enemies, no orders, just a hum of wind and memory. He remembers Tanaka's voice through the static, the brief moment of understanding between them. "Mercy is not weakness," he whispers, repeating his own words like a promise. Below him, the islands stretch like green jewels across the ocean. He realizes that he no longer flies to conquer. He flies to remember. The radio crackles with a routine call from command, but he doesn't answer. For once, silence feels like peace. Back in Japan, a small ceremony unfolds at a village shrine. Kenji kneels before a wooden memorial tablet bearing Tanaka's name. His mother and sister stand nearby, dressed in white. The priest chants softly, the sound of wind chimes blending with ocean breeze. Kenji lays the folded white scarf before the shrine and bows deeply. "He found peace in the sky," he says quietly. His mother's eyes glisten. Then let us thank the sky for returning him. As they rise, a faint rumble of distant aircraft passes overhead. Kenji looks up and smiles, not in sorrow, but in remembrance. Twilight over the Pacific again. The camera drifts high above endless waves, where once the Hellcats and Zeros clashed. Jack stands on the deck, helmet under his arm, watching the sea fade into darkness. For every plane that fell, he says softly, "Man once dreamed of home." Behind him, the flag flutters gently, not in triumph, but in remembrance. The ship's loudspeaker hums with distant music, soft jazz, slow and aching. Jack closes his eyes, the sound blending with the ocean. In that moment, war feels smaller, and mercy feels infinite. Justice, he finally understands, isn't about who wins. It's about who remembers why they fought at all. Months later, the war begins to fade from the Pacific like a receding tide. The Princeton anchors near a peaceful atoll where palm trees sway in warm wind. Jack Monroe walks the quiet deck, now free from the roar of takeoffs and alarms. The air smells of salt and oil, familiar yet gentler somehow. He opens a small envelope, a letter from home. Inside, his mother's handwriting trembles with relief. "Your brother would be proud, Jack." He closes his eyes, the sound of waves steadying his heart. For the first time in years, he feels the ache of peace, a wound that heals slowly but never truly closes. Above him, the sky stretches vast and forgiving, no longer a battlefield but a promise. In a small Japanese village, Kenji Arai visits a schoolhouse rebuilt from wartime rubble. Children run across the yard laughing, chasing paper planes they've folded themselves. One child's plane, made from a scrap of Tanaka's old flight manual, drifts toward the sea. Kenji catches it, smiling faintly. The teacher, noticing his uniform, bows deeply. "Were you a pilot?" she asks. He nods, eyes distant but kind. "I was," he says, "but I learned too late that the sky belongs to everyone." The teacher smiles, watching the children. "Then maybe it's yours again, too." The laughter of the children fills the air, pure, boundless, unscarred by war. Back on the Princeton, Jack sits in his cabin writing his report. The words come slow, deliberate. He no longer writes of victories or losses, but of faces. Billa's grin, Tanaka's salute, Kenji's eyes he imagines but never saw. "We were enemies," he writes, "but we shared the same sky." He seals the paper in an envelope marked confidential and places it in a small metal box labeled Mercy. He closes it gently, not as a soldier but as a man. Outside, the sound of waves and distant laughter mingle, carrying the scent of rain and oil, a symphony of endings and beginnings. Years later, the war is over. The world has moved on, though the sky remembers. An aviation museum in Tokyo displays a restored Zero and a Hellcat side by side, paint-worn, stories silent. Visitors walk quietly past, reading the plaques in awe. Among them stands Kenji, older now, gray, streaking his hair. He pauses before the Hellcat marked Mercy and smiles soft. His reflection merges with that of the plane's pilot in a photograph beside it. Jack Monroe. He bows deeply, whispering, "Arigato." For a fleeting second, it feels as though the engines hum again, carrying both men's spirits into a sky beyond war. The final image is the sky, endless, radiant, and quiet. Clouds drift like soft memories across the horizon. Jack's voice, calm and timeless, echoes as narration. Justice isn't about the battles we win or lose. It's about what we carry after the fight, the mercy we choose, the peace we protect. As his words fade, the camera glides upward through the clouds until the blue turns to white, and white to silence. Somewhere, faintly, two contrails cross paths high above the Pacific, one fading, one rising, blending into a single line of light.